The final hours of Natalie Wood remain one of Hollywood's most enduring mysteries. This narrative explores a complex, decades-long investigation defined by shifting testimonies and lingering questions regarding the events of November 29, 1981. At age 43, the actress disappeared in the Pacific Ocean near Santa Catalina Island while on a vessel trip aboard the yacht the Splendor. On board were her husband, the actor Robert Wagner, actor Christopher Walken, and the captain, Dennis Davern. According to the accounts provided to investigators in 1981, Robert Wagner maintained that there was no discord on board, describing a quiet and uneventful evening. As the night progressed, Walken and the captain retreated to their quarters in the forward section of the vessel. This left the primary living areas in the aft deck, the rear of the yacht where the dinghy was secured, unoccupied save for Natalie Wood and Robert Wagner. Wagner stated that Natalie eventually retired to their cabin, appearing calm as she prepared for rest. Initially, the yacht's captain, Dennis Davern, corroborated Wagner's account of the evening. For his part, Christopher Walken stated that he had retired to his cabin and, likely due to the alcohol consumed earlier, was sound asleep and therefore heard or saw nothing during the night. Wagner further explained that the situation changed when he discovered that Natalie was missing. In his account, he described a sequence of events centered on the yacht's 13-foot inflatable dinghy. He explained that after noticing Natalie was not on board, he realized the dinghy was also missing. His theory was that Natalie, disturbed by the sound of the dinghy striking the hull, had gone out to secure it, accidentally slipped from the stern swim platform, and entered the water, after which the dinghy drifted away. Natalie Wood was eventually located roughly 1 mile from where the yacht was anchored, and the dinghy was later found washed up on rocks nearby. To understand the night of November 29, 1981, one must consider the conditions surrounding the vessel near Santa Catalina Island. The air and water temperatures were freezing, which posed an immediate risk of hypothermia and consequently rapid loss of muscle coordination. Furthermore, Natalie Wood was wearing a heavy down jacket over her night clothes. In a nautical environment, a soaked down jacket becomes significantly weighted, making physical movement arduous and staying afloat exceptionally difficult. These factors, combined with the extreme darkness of the water, form the environmental backdrop of the incident. Finally, it should be noted that the group had consumed a significant amount of alcohol that day. Toxicology reports indicated that Natalie Wood had a blood alcohol content of 0.14%, a factor that would have further impaired her coordination and ability to attempt self-rescue. Taking these factors into consideration, alongside with the testimonies provided by those on board, the initial investigation concluded that the evidence did not warrant further inquiry. The investigators concluded that Natalie Wood, disturbed by the persistent sound of the dinghy striking the yacht's hull, chose to address the noise herself. In this scenario, she would have descended to the swim platform at the aft of the vessel to retie or adjust the lines securing the small craft. Given the slick conditions of the swim platform and the inherent instability of being near the water's edge, investigators concluded it was plausible that she lost her footing during this process, fell into the water, and was unable to regain her position on the boat. However, even at the time, several details emerged that challenged the accidental drowning theory. First was Wood's well-documented lifelong fear of dark water. Her sister Lana Wood has long expressed skepticism that Natalie would have voluntarily ventured out alone to secure the dinghy, especially given that there were 3 men on board, including a professional skipper responsible for the vessel's maintenance. Furthermore, an important detail surrounds the yacht's configuration and how the dinghy was secured. The stern swim platform sits very close to the water level, and according to the captain's account, the dinghy was tied off to a cleat on the main deck level. This meant there was no operational need to step outside the safety of the hull to secure it. The task could easily have been managed from the deck. Second was the physical evidence. Natalie was discovered with bruising on her arms and legs, along with scratches on her face. The initial official report concluded these injuries were sustained while she attempted to climb into the dinghy from the water. However, critics argued that these marks were inconsistent with that scenario. Because the incident was prematurely classified as an accident, the investigation closed without comprehensive forensic collection. Fingernail scrapings were omitted, and the dinghy was never fully re-examined. The case remained closed and officially classified as an accident for 3 decades. It was not until 2011 that the Los Angeles County Sheriff's Department reopened the investigation, prompted by the emergence of new information, most notably statements from the yacht's captain alleging that he had provided inaccurate information during the initial 1981 inquiry. Chapter 1. The Evolution of Testimony. The narrative surrounding the death of Natalie Wood has shifted significantly over the decades. What began as a closed case of an accidental event has become a subject of intense scrutiny, fueled by major contradictions in the accounts provided by those on board and the emergence of an external witness testimony. Robert Wagner. In the 1981 statement, Wagner reported that the evening was harmonious. He stated that he last saw his wife in their cabin as she prepared for bed, and he assumed she had gone out to fix the dinghy, which he claimed was banging against the hull, before her disappearing. He denied any significant conflict. Later revision, 2008 memoir. Wagner acknowledged for the first time that there was a heated argument between himself and Christopher Walken regarding Natalie's career. He admitted to losing his temper and smashing a wine bottle on the table. However, he continues to maintain that he does not know how his wife entered the water and that her passing was a tragic accident.
When that accident happened, there were so many people on top of that. At the time, you can't believe it, But when that all came up again, it was so...
Were you shocked that the captain said that?
Well, it was rather transparent, It was rather transparent. I hadn't seen him for a long time, and, he wasn't the captain of the boat.
Dennis Davern, the captain, 1981 statement. Davern initially supported Wagner's account, telling authorities that the evening was peaceful and the event was an accident. However, in 2011, after the reopening of the case, Davern retracted his original story, alleging that he and Wagner had agreed on a narrative to protect Wagner. He claims that Wagner and Wood had a vicious fight on the back deck, and that when Wood went missing, Wagner refused to turn on the boat's searchlights or initiate a proper search, allegedly telling him, "We don't want to do that right now."
It was just a whole lot of noise and a whole lot of yelling, and I started to get very concerned, so I knocked on the door. And Robert Wagner opened the door and he says, "Go away." I said, "Well, I better go away." When everything got quiet, I thought something just isn't right. So I went to the back of the boat, and Robert Wagner was standing at the back of the boat. And he looked at me and he said, "Natalie's missing." I said, "We had a big searchlight on the top of the boat." I said, "I'm going to go turn that searchlight on to see if we can see her." He says, "Don't do that." I said, "Don't do that." I said, "We need to call somebody. We need to call for some help." And he said, "No, we're not going to do that."
Christopher Walken. Christopher Walken has maintained a consistent, albeit limited, account. He has acknowledged the earlier argument regarding Natalie Wood's career, but maintains that he retired to his cabin early and fell asleep, remaining unaware of any subsequent events until the following morning. This narrative, that he slept through the search efforts and the eventual notification of the Coast Guard, has been a cornerstone of his position for decades. However, it remains a significant point of contention. Many investigators and observers have expressed skepticism, finding it difficult to reconcile such a deep sleep with the proximity of the events on a vessel of that size. Consequently, some have speculated that he may have consciously chosen to distance himself from the situation to avoid becoming entangled in the unfolding crisis.
The real story of her death is that she drowned, and nobody knows how she drowned or what happened except her.
Marilyn Wayne, the 2011 new witness. It was only after the case was officially reopened in 2011 that investigators located and interviewed independent witnesses from nearby vessels, whose accounts directly challenged the peaceful night narrative. Among them was Marilyn Wayne, who testified that at approximately 11 p.m. on the night in question, she heard a woman's voice desperately crying out, "Help me, someone please help me, I'm drowning." Wayne further reported that a man's voice, which she perceived as slurred and coming from the direction of the Splendor, shouted back, "Hold on, we're coming to get you." According to Wayne, no rescue attempt followed, and the immediate area subsequently fell silent. Chapter 2. The alleged timeline, November 28 to 29, 1981. The following reconstruction incorporates testimony and allegations that emerged following the 2011 reopening of the case. These accounts remain contested. Between 1 p.m. and 2 p.m., the Splendor arrives at Isthmus Cove. Natalie Wood and Christopher Walken head ashore to Doug's Harbor Reef to drink. Robert Wagner allegedly remains behind on the yacht, drinking and brooding. 4 p.m., Wagner and the yacht captain join the others ashore. He reportedly appears heavily intoxicated and visibly agitated, seemingly stung by his earlier isolation. Between 8 p.m. and 10 p.m., the group has dinner at Doug's Harbor Reef. They consume a significant amount of wine and champagne. Witnesses describe the table as volatile and loud, marked by deep-seated tension. At 10 p.m., the group returns to the Splendor. Everyone is highly intoxicated. 10:15 p.m. As they board, Wood is visibly unsteady. She stumbles on the pier and lets out a small yell, requiring Wagner and the captain to assist her into the dinghy. 10:30 p.m. In the salon, the tension culminates when Walken suggests that Natalie Wood should focus more on her career, a topic that reportedly pushed Wagner over the edge. Wagner allegedly erupts in a fit of rage fueled by his jealousy and mounting insecurity and smashes a wine bottle on the table. An upset Wood retreats to her stateroom to escape the volatile environment. Sensing the hostility, Walken and the captain soon retire to their respective quarters, leaving the couple alone. 11 p.m. Davern later alleged that yelling and crashing sounds echoed from the master stateroom, with the argument seemingly migrating to the aft deck. 11:05 p.m. This is the suspected disappearance window. Marilyn Wayne, a witness on a nearby boat, testifies that she heard a woman's desperate cries for help. "Help me, someone, please help me, I'm drowning," lasting for nearly 20 minutes. 11:10 p.m. Wayne further reports hearing a man's slurred, callous voice shout from the direction of the Splendor, "Hold on, we're coming to get you." No rescue attempt follows, and the night abruptly falls silent. 11:15 p.m. Davern claims he finds Wagner alone on the aft deck, sweating and looking highly agitated. When the captain panics and suggests turning on the searchlights, Wagner allegedly refuses, stating, "No, don't do that. We're going to wait," and pours the captain a drink to ensure his compliance. 1:30 a.m. Wagner initiates a radio call, but notably directs it to Don Whiting, the manager of the shore-based restaurant where they had dined, rather than to the Coast Guard or local authorities. This choice allegedly indicates an attempt to keep the search within a private circle, checking if Wood had returned to the bar instead of sounding a formal maritime alarm. This delay is widely considered a significant breach of protocol. 3:26 a.m. The Coast Guard is finally notified, nearly 4.5 hours after Wood was last seen. Investigators and maritime experts emphasize this gap as a critical failure. By choosing to search privately and prioritizing discretion over immediate emergency response, the occupants of the Splendor effectively lost the window of opportunity for a rescue. 7:45 a.m., a search helicopter discovers Wood's body floating 1 mile from the yacht. Chapter 3, The Autopsy Addendum. Natalie Wood's injuries became the catalyst for a significant shift in the investigation. In 2012, the Los Angeles County Coroner's Office released a 10-page autopsy addendum. It officially challenged the 1981 conclusion of a simple accidental event. It revised the manner of her passing to other undetermined factors. Medical examiners determined that many of the bruises were fresh. They were allegedly sustained prior to Wood entering the water. This suggested to some experts that she may have been subjected to a physical struggle or restraint before her passing. The physical evidence. Recent examinations of the autopsy report have highlighted a pattern of trauma. Some forensic experts argue this trauma is consistent with defensive wounds sustained during an altercation. The updated report detailed these findings. The arms and wrists. Wood displayed a notable 4-inch bruise on her right forearm, alongside bruising on her wrists. Independent investigators have suggested these markings are consistent with a forceful grip. They may also represent defensive movements made while blocking physical strikes. The face and neck. The report documented scratches on her neck. It also documented superficial abrasions on her left forehead, eyebrow, and cheek area. These are often cited by theorists as evidence of a physical encounter. The legs. The autopsy noted multiple fresh, 1-inch bruises on her left thigh. It also noted abrasions and bruising extending down the backs of her legs, knees, and ankles. Some analysts have argued that these injuries, rather than being consistent with a fall, are more indicative of something else. They suggest someone may have been forcefully pushed or dragged against the yacht's structure. Chapter 4, The Foul Play Theory. Based on these updated forensic findings, 2 primary theories regarding alleged foul play have emerged. Theory A, the alleged physical altercation. In this scenario, it is theorized that the events of that night centered on a volatile physical confrontation on the aft deck between Wood and Wagner. Proponents of this theory suggest Wagner may have restrained her by the arms, resulting in the observed bruising, and that during the struggle she was forcefully pushed overboard. In this account, it is alleged that the dinghy was subsequently set adrift by someone on board to create the appearance that she had slipped while attempting to move or secure the vessel, rather than being the victim of an assault. Theory B, the theory of criminal negligence. This scenario suggests that even if Wood's initial entry into the water was an accident, the failure to render aid transformed the event into an alleged act of malice. Under this theory, Wagner allegedly witnessed Wood fall overboard, but, driven by alcohol-fueled rage or a desire to avoid confrontation, consciously chose not to intervene. By allegedly refusing to deploy life-saving equipment, preventing the captain from activating the searchlights, and delaying the distress call for hours, it is suggested that her passing was a result of intentional neglect, rather than a tragic mishap. Chapter 5, Davern's Behavior, an analysis of complicity and coercion. The question of why Captain Dennis Davern would allegedly assist in a cover-up is central to the mystery. It has been suggested that Davern's compliance was not driven merely by fear, but by the overwhelming imbalance of power. Robert Wagner, a titan of 1980s television, wielded immense influence within the Hollywood studio system, maintaining deep-seated connections to elite legal and law enforcement circles. For a boat captain, the prospect of challenging such a figure carried the implicit threat of total professional and personal ruin. Davern's subsequent behavior has been analyzed through three primary factors: financial control and gilded captivity. In the immediate aftermath of Wood's death, it is alleged that Wagner exercised absolute control over Davern. By moving the captain into his personal estate and providing a salary for work that was largely symbolic, Wagner effectively kept Davern under constant close-quarters surveillance, creating an environment Davern later described as a form of gilded captivity. The weight of Hollywood influence. In 1981, Wagner's status as a top-tier star made him a formidable adversary. Davern allegedly understood that any accusation against such Hollywood royalty would be met with an immediate, high-powered legal defense that could easily dismantle his reputation and ensure he would never find employment in the maritime industry again. Complicity and self-preservation. Davern has acknowledged his own heavy intoxication alongside Wagner during the hours Wood was in the water. By failing to call the Coast Guard and participating in the initial delay, Davern became legally complicit in the narrative of the event. Consequently, Wagner's hold over the captain was reinforced by a shared secret. If Davern were to come forward later, he risked exposing his own role in the negligence, potentially leading to his own incarceration. Chapter 6. Legal Status and the Current Standstill. In 2018, following years of renewed investigative focus and evolving forensic findings, the Los Angeles County Sheriff's Department officially named Robert Wagner a person of interest in the case. Despite this, Wagner has never been formally accused of or charged with a crime. Law enforcement officials have consistently stated that while the evidence suggests a highly suspicious sequence of events, they currently lack the definitive physical proof required to secure a conviction in a court of law. Therefore, the case remains at a standstill. What do you think? Did the evidence convince you that this was an act of foul play, or do you believe the original accident narrative holds weight? Drop your theories in the comments below. I want to hear your perspective on this dark chapter of history. If you enjoyed this deep dive, don't forget to hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications so you do not miss our next investigation.